Thank you, President Polisi, and thank you, Mr. Smith. Before I start, I'd like to mention that my father's cousin, Marjorie Owens, is also with us. And her comment earlier today was that my father loved to be the center of attention and needed to be the center of attention. And I know, looking out at all of you, how much he would truly enjoy this event. So I thank you all for coming. My youngest brother, Andrew, and I are almost 10 years apart, and this gives us rather different perspectives on the family. We welcome this opportunity to share our respective views from the home front. When Mr. Schumann brought Dad to Juilliard, I was barely 2, so I grew up nested in the Juilliard community. From barbecues in the Schumann's backyard to band concerts by Richard Franco Goldman and dinners with the Prausnitzes. Mostly, I grew up bathed in piano music. My earliest memories include waking each day to the sound of Dad practicing. I can easily recall lying underneath the grand piano on my back, feeling the waves of sound shifting and changing as they passed through my little body. I can still see his feet dancing on the pedals. Before I had any brothers, the family was Mom, Dad, the piano, and me. Picture this. A two-something reaching high up with her favorite red crayon to make the piano more beautifuler for when Daddy gets home. Now picture this. Daddy making growly noises and scrubbing away at the ivories on the Steinway, and they were real ivory back then, and the color not quite coming off. This was not one of my more successful gifts. Dad started practicing every day at 7 a.m., unless it was a school day for him. Some school days did not start well. I was eating my cereal the day Van Cliburn called. Dad had one foot out the door when Mom handed him the telephone with a look of consternation on her face. We all quickly found out that Mr. Cliburn was not prepared for class that day. I expect some of you know more than I do about the repercussions of not doing your homework. As you all know, Dad had a relentless spirit of adventure. At home, this manifested as zest. Zest for food, zest for literature, zest for theater and art, zest for interesting people, and zest for the odd. Our mother was his full, complete, and equal partner in these adventures. She was every bit as tolerant, educated, and classy. They were great friends. When Dad began to tour, she made the difficult decision to stay home with me and my brothers. The tours were long, and I missed him. The piano was silent, but that meant we could make a lot more noise. Mom kept itineraries and maps. This helped me so I would know how close or far away he was from home, because we would put pins in the map for each stop. Mom accompanied Dad to concerts, theater, and opera productions, as well as many dinner parties. In turn, they hosted colleagues, friends, and students. Our home was filled with amusing and entertaining people. Students came for coaching and stayed for dinner. Denver Oldham comes to mind because he always brought his mother's Scottish shortbread, which to this day I'm addicted to. Rosa Levine was a frequent guest. Madame Levine did not like drafts, so the heat went up and the shawls came out. I had no idea how important she was. She just seemed to like coming over, and Mom and Dad always seemed especially lively when she did. Dad practiced finger exercises. She taught him well, and he practiced them at the dinner table into his 80s. Dad's spirit of adventure extended well beyond food, books, and friends. He loved to travel, not only for work, but to excite his imagination. As a boy, he had been on trips with his family and had read widely of exotic places and of exotic people. I have his Oz book collection and his copy of The Scarlet Pimpernel. Among his papers, I found a story he had written as a boy set in the land of Oz. He sent it to Ruth Plumley Thompson, one of the authors of the Oz books, and they began to correspond. By example and by inclusion, we children were encouraged to play with ideas as well as toys. To Mother's dismay, he let me watch old movies, particularly monster movies from the 1930s, and German expressionist films. When we were old enough, Dad took each of us on trips. With my brother John, he went to North Africa. With Andrew, to Easter Island and the Seychelles. He and I toured the Soviet Union in 1964 and dallied in Fiji and Tonga. He and Mother went to China and Caucasian Russia with his best buddy, his adored sister, Frances. Dad journeyed up the Yenisei River to the Arctic Circle by boat. He had to buy and wear Wellington boots to tromp on the barely thawed Siberian tundra. He was well over 80 at the time. Life in Larchmont was not a series of episodes from Father Knows Best. Dad's career presented some real challenges to the family. Life revolved around him and the piano. Shh, Daddy's practicing was the watchword every day. The tours were months long, leaving Mother to manage the household completely alone. She got very good at it. In fact, she really functioned as stage manager for his entire life. Dad had the career, the class schedule, the practice time, the concerts to prepare and play, the social events. Mom ran the show from backstage. Without that structure, none of us, including Dad, would have accomplished nearly as much as we have done. His Steinway was the other woman. It took me a long time to come to terms with this other woman. She took him away from us. But that cloud eventually showed its silver lining, if you will. Each of us children developed our own intellects and talents independently. If he could do it, so could we. And Mother kept the home fires burning. Dad had a very well-defined, charming public persona and a very veiled private one. At home, he could be really exasperating. Dad was the center of attention. It was nearly impossible to compete with him. He did not deal at all well with the direct expression of unpleasant emotion and simply made a habit of avoiding it. If overwhelmed or startled, Dad could become very intense or else totally absent. Mother filled in the spaces as best she could and buffered his life, and I will say also ours. I knew that a very enriched man was hiding in there, and I had a hard time reaching him until the last years of his life. If I wanted to know what he was feeling, I had to listen to him play. If I really listened, I heard great depth of feeling, sensitivity, generosity, passion, and profound intelligence. Dad poured himself out through his music. In his last few years, without his piano voice, he softened. We spent a lot of time together watching old movies, resolving practical household matters, and generally hanging out. 5 p.m. was drink time. A glass of Lagavulin and some goldfish crackers were a sacred ritual. Family anniversaries became opportunities to listen to him tell stories about our ancestors. We had a growing shared sense of transition from generation to generation, of preparing his passage and securing his place in the family history. I know from accompanying him here to accept his honorary doctorate and his Juilliard medal that he deeply, deeply appreciated his place among the generations of musicians that have flourished in this wonderful house. He was at home here. His Juilliard ID card is still in his wallet. Your warmth, friendship, and recognition, both individually and communally, comforted and sustained him. He belonged to us all and will live on through us all. I raise a glass to him and to you all. Thank you.